Yo, what's going on guys? Tanmay here for Simple Snippets and welcome back to another video tutorial on dynamic web application development using C# in ASP and using MS SQL as the database. So if you followed this entire playlist and if you've come so far, in the previous few videos what we did is we completely developed the admin login and user login page as well as the sign up page. So if you have missed any of the videos, do check out this playlist because we are going to continue forward from there. In this video, as the title of the video suggests, we are going to be developing two major admin pages, that is the author management page and the publisher management page. So these are two admin functions which only an admin can access, and for that we need to go to admin login first. So this is our website that we've developed so far. I'm going to go and do the admin login. We've already done admin login and user login. So TS11 is one user which is an admin user in the admin table with the password 123. If I log in and if I now scroll down, you can see I'm getting the admin related functions: author management, publisher management, book inventory and book issuing. Now out of these four, we're going to do author management and publisher management. Once we do one, the next one is exactly identical. So let's go ahead and click on author management. Also, before we start off, when you click on logout, you are completely erasing the session variable, right? So make sure you add one more line which is to redirect to the home page. So that's something that I haven't added in the previous couple of videos. Just to show you, going to the code to the site master, if you see, this is the logout button, you can see. And what we did is we completely erased the session out over here. We unhide and hide the respective link buttons. So add this one extra line, response.redirect, which will redirect our entire page to the home page. So if I click on logout, I go to the home page. That's how it should work. So again, coming to the admin login, TS11 123, and now let's go on author management. So what is author management and what is publisher management? These are two pages which will help us add, update, delete author details and publisher details for a book. So ultimately this is the inventory management system for a book, which is basically a library, right? So a book has author, a book has a publisher, and those details we will store in separate tables. We've already talked about it. So here only two things that we need to add about an author is ID and author name. Similarly, when we want to update that name, you can have that update functionality, and when you want to delete the author, you can delete it. And over here we're going to see a grid view which will load up all the author details that we've added in the database. Coming to the database, open up your SQL Management Studio, go into your database. We've done this quite often now, so I'm assuming you've got a hang of it. Over here we're going to add details to the author master table. So if I select top 100 rows, you can see right now I don't have anything. Inside this we are going to add author ID and author name. Obviously author ID is going to be the unique ID, primary key. And when we click on add, we need to perform the database connectivity that we've been doing in the previous tutorials. We need to insert, then we have to fire a update query, we also have to fire a delete. So this is all three different CRUD operations, that is the basic insert, update, delete operations in one tutorial. So this can be used in multiple different projects also. So without wasting further time, let's actually get into the coding part. If you're new to my channel, my name is Tanmay Sakpal and I do a lot of computer science and information technology video tutorials like computer programming, development, technology talks and a lot more on this channel. So if that's something you're interested into, then definitely subscribe and turn on the notifications to get the latest updates and never miss out on such important topics. So coming to the website, on the author management, the front end designing is done. You can see we have add, update, delete buttons. Just double click on add, and the particular click event will be fired. This is what we've been doing so far. So I'm going to say add button click. Similarly, we have for update. We also have for delete. And then we have one go button which will take this ID and get the respective name corresponding to that ID and put it in this text box. So it's a select query basically. So just click on this, and this is go button click. Okay, so we've created all the click events over here. The next thing that we have to do is we have to perform database connectivity, and obviously the step number one is to get the connection string. Now I know this is going to be a little repetitive. If you watch the previous tutorials, you know already what to do. First thing, we need to get the connection string from the web.config file. So this is our connection string. The connection string name is con. If you see, there is one more connection string being added over here. I'll explain to you what this is later on. We're going to need one more connection string for the SQL data source which will be connected to the Gridview. I'll tell you in a minute what is going on, so you'll understand that. Anyways, coming back to the code, first thing we need to create a string which will hold this connection string from the web.config, and this is pretty much repetitive. So I'm just going to go to the admin login page, go over here, just copy this and paste it, string strcon from the configuration manager. Of course it is going to throw an error because we need to add the namespaces. Just hover over here, click the bulb and include that particular namespace. Once that namespace is added, the error will go away. And of course this has to be created inside the class. I always make a mistake of adding it inside the namespace. It has to be over here inside the class at the very top, so that we can use it throughout these different on-click events and our custom functions that we make. So step number 2, what do you have to do? We want to do addition of a new author. So when you click on add, the ID and author name will be added to the database in the backend system in this database, which is MS SQL. But when we want to add it, we have to first check whether the ID already exists, if it is a unique ID or not, right? Because we have said that our ID is the primary key. So we cannot have two authors having the same primary key, which is the author ID. So for that, we have to again make a check, which will be a select query in the database, just like what we were doing when we were signing up a new member, just like what we were doing when we were actually doing the admin login, to check whether a user exists or not. So it's going to be pretty much the exact same thing, right? So just going on to the add function, let's create a user defined function over here. I'm going to say bool check if author exists. Now if you followed this tutorial, we've created such function before when we were signing up a new user. So if I go to user sign up, if I scroll down over here, you can see there is a check member exist. So this is doing the exact same thing, which is checking the database whether a user exists from its primary key, that is ID. So literally I'm just going to copy this entire code. If you've missed that tutorial, I'll explain to you quickly. I'm just going to paste it over here, and I'm going to get a few errors because I have to add all those classes. So just hover on this class, hit the bulb, select the appropriate namespace. Over here also we have to do that. Okay. So what will this custom boolean function that we've created, check if author exists, will do? It will connect with the database using the strcon, that is the string which is holding the connection string. It will fire a query select star from, but this time it would be author master. So this is the author master table. Make sure you have proper names. Okay. So over here in the database, I have kind of created a confusion over here because I have given some of the names as table and some of them are TBL. Don't make that mistake. Anyways, if you use this exact name, if you copy this from over here, you won't make any mistake. So the query is select star from author master TBL where, and this time we need author underscore ID, right? So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it over here, and it is coming from text box 1. If you go onto the author management page, the ID is text box 1 for this first text box, which will take the ID. The second is text box 2, which is holding the author name. So we want the author ID. We're going to check it. Now we are using a disconnected architecture. We are saying SQL data adapter DA, which will take this query, and when we fire the query, the result will be put in this data table. So this data table is an inbuilt class which will hold the table or hold this result, whatever we get, into this object, and we are saying da.fill. So this data adapter is basically adapting this table from the database into this object, which is also like a table, okay, but it is inside this programming language. So da.fill will fill that object with the corresponding row if we get, that is, if we provide a proper value of the author ID, we will get one record, otherwise we won't get any record. So that's what we are checking over here. If we are getting any rows whose count is greater than or equal to 1, we are saying return true, which means this author exists with this particular author ID which we pass in text box 1, and else it is returning false. And if we get any exception, we are just printing out the message and we are again returning false. So this check if author exists will first check if the author exists. So when we are adding a new author, first thing that we have to do is we have to say if check if author exists. If it is existing, then we can simply show a message. Let me just copy this response.write alert box message. We can say author with this ID already exists. You cannot add another author with the same author ID. Okay. Or you can show any other error message. So when this function that we just created over here returns true, it would mean that there is an author with the corresponding ID already. You cannot add another author with that same ID. But if it returns false, we will go in the else block. In the else block, obviously we want to add that author into the database. So again, let's create another user defined function over here. We will say void add new author. Okay. Now in sign up also we were adding a new member. So just go to the sign up page over here. Let's scroll down. You can see sign up new member. Exactly the same thing, only the table and the values and parameters are going to change. So again, copying this entire thing, coming to the author.cs file, pasting it over here. Pretty much everything is going to be the same except the insert query. So now we're going to say insert into, and it is going to be author master tbl. Just going to paste it over here. We don't have so many columns. We only have author ID and author name. So I'm going to erase everything else. So the first column name is author ID. Second is author name. The values are going to come from again @author ID and @author name. Everything else can be erased. Also, if you don't know what this @author ID and @author name is, it is basically just placeholders. And the placeholders can be anything. You can name it A1, you can name it A2, but depending upon what you name it over here, those parameters also need to be added over here. So we have two parameters. We will say cmd.parameters.add with value, and then A1 will come over here, A2 will come over here. A1 means author ID because it is the first parameter, and author ID is coming from text box 1, right? This is the text box. So textbox1.text, and A2 is coming from textbox 2. So generally I tend to give the same name as the column name as the placeholder also, so that we don't make any mistakes. Also, to explain this add new author function again, you've already seen the insert query, but just to go ahead with it again, we are creating the connection object, we are opening the connection, we are creating the command, we are adding the parameters separately, and then we are firing the query saying execute non-query. Then we are again closing the connection and we are saying author added successfully. So I'm just going to say author added successfully. Okay, there's that. Save this, and the add function is pretty much done. Let's see if this works. Over here on the add button, click in the else part. I'm going to say add new author. Save this and let's refresh our page. Okay, so our page is refreshed. I'm going to say A001 and I'm going to say let's say author name. Let me just pull up some author names in the notepad. Okay, so here we have some author name with author ID. So A001 is Joseph Murphy. I'm just going to copy this, paste it over here. We have Joseph Murphy. I'm going to paste it over here. It has to have only one Y. And when I click on add, I'm going to get a message author added successfully. I'll click on OK. Of course, I'm not getting any list over here in the grid view because we still have to add that functionality. We'll do that in few minutes. Let's actually go to the database and see if this author is added in the database or not. That will verify whether our add function is working. It should work obviously because we've already used it once. So going into the author master table, I'll say select top 1000 rows, and there you go. You can see A001 Joseph Murphy is added. Let's add a few more. I'm going to say A002. And this is Dale Carnegie. I'm going to click on add. Okay, it's added successfully. Let's try to add this again. If I click on add, I'm getting author ID with this ID already exists. You cannot add another author with the same author ID. So pretty much our validation, basic validation is also working. Obviously, we've not done extensive validation, and I keep on repeating this that we'll do more validations in the end of this entire course when we are going to enhance our project. Right now, we are just doing the core basic functionality. Now, the next step is the update query. So let's go ahead and add the functionality on the update button. Coming to the project, just double click on update. Now, of course, when we are updating an author, you first have to enter the author ID and then whatever the updated value. So let's say I made a typing mistake, and for this Dale Carnegie, and I want to change the name to something like this, or just keep Dale. And if I click on update, when I fire an update query, we need a primary key corresponding to which the author name will be updated. So that's why author ID has to be entered and it has to be correct. So again, let me just copy this code for the add button and I'm gonna paste it over here for the update also. Over here, first time obviously we'll have to check if the author exists. Only then we can update it, right? And instead of add new author, we will create another function, user defined function, which will update the author. So I'm gonna say void update author. Okay. And things are gonna be pretty much the same, except this time it would be a update query. So just like add query, I'm gonna copy this try catch over here. I'm just gonna paste it. And instead of insert into author master table, I'm gonna say update author master table. And of course the update query is a little different if you remember the basic query. If not, just follow along. It is update author master table set, and we have to set author name only because the ID will not be updatable. Because once the ID is set for a particular author, it is a unique key that identifies that author, right? So we don't want to update the author ID. We only want to update the author name. So make sure to understand that. So we will say set the author name, right? What is the author name column name? It is author underscore name. So I'm going to say set author underscore name equal to author name. So this is again a placeholder which we will add over here, which will come from the text box 2, and that would be updated value. Also we have to add the where clause. So I'm going to say where author underscore ID equals to single quotes, inside that double quotes, inside that plus plus, and the ID will obviously come from text box 1. So dot text dot trim to erase out any extra spaces. So we are saying update author master table, set the new author name to @author name. So it would come from text box 2. Here's that parameter where the author ID is whatever author ID we enter in this form. Okay. And once that is done, we will say author updated successfully. Save this and let's call this on the click event of update. If we double click, instead of add new author, we will say update author. Save this and let's refresh our page. Okay, so right now coming to the database, let me just refresh the database. We have A001 as Joseph Murphy. We have A002 as Dale Carnegie. Let's actually type in A001 over here and let's only keep Joseph. Okay. So I'm going to say JOSEPH. And now if I click on update, I'm getting author ID already exists. Okay. So one mistake that I did in the logic is if the author exists, only then we can let him update, right? So when you're adding, if the author exists, you cannot let him add. But when you're updating, if the author exists, only then you can let him update. So yeah, the opposite or vice versa scenario is happening over here. In the if block, we need to first check if the author exists, only then update the author. In the else part, you can say author does not exist. Let's save this, let's refresh, and I think it will be fired again. So author would be updated, you can see. And if I go to the database now, if I again fire this entire query, now you can see I'm getting Joseph. Let's add Murphy again. Now let's click on update and author updated successfully. Again firing this query. Select the entire query, click on execute. There you go, update is working fine. Let's enter some random number or random author ID A123. Click update and now I can say author does not exist. So basic validation with update is done. Last thing left is the delete query. So let's go and do that. Double clicking on delete. This is that click event for the delete. Again the same logic will apply what we did for the update author. For delete author also, we'll first need to check if the author exists. If it exists, then we need to fire delete author, which is a user defined function which we still have to create. So delete author is something that we have to create. Let's create it over here under the user defined functions. So I'm going to say void delete author. Things are going to be pretty much the same like update author or add author. Just copy this, paste it over here, same connection opening, just the command will change, and the command is going to be delete from the table name. The table name is obviously author underscore master underscore TBL, where author ID is coming from text box 1. That's about it. We don't even need to add any parameters. Okay. And then we will say author deleted. successfully. Save this. I know I'm going a little fast, but by now you should get a hang of it. If you watched all the previous tutorials, this is like a very repetitive task. In fact, that's the reason why I'm only going to do author management, and the publisher management is supposed to be done by you. But let's complete this first. We still have to do quite a few things, not just insert, update, delete, right? We need to do the grid view and the go button also. So save this. Let's refresh and let's try to delete A001. So I'm going to say A001, and when I click on delete, this ID will be picked up and Joseph Murphy should be deleted. Click on delete. So you can see author deleted successfully. So if I go to the database and if I refresh and execute this query, A001 is gone. Alright, so our author, insert, update, delete are working successfully. If you want these text boxes to become blank after every button click, what you can do is you can simply create another custom function. Let's just call it void clear form. Inside that we will say textbox1.text equal to blank and textbox2.text equals to blank, and let's call this clear form every time the add, update or delete is done successfully. Okay, so whenever you add, or whenever, let's start from delete, whenever you do a proper delete, author deleted successfully, we will say clear form. Whenever you update an author, let's again clear the form, and whenever you add, let's update and clear the form. Okay, save this. Things are gonna work pretty much fine. Now the next thing that we have to do is, along with add, update, delete, we also want to show a grid view over here, which will show us the real-time values whatever are added in the database, so that we don't have to go back and forth with the SQL Server Management Studio to check whether the value is added or not. We should be able to see it then and there. Once I add, I should be able to see this over here in the grid view, and that's where the grid view comes into picture. So coming to the code, if you go on the front end, if you scroll down, you can see we've already added the grid view, just that there are no values in it, and that's why we are not able to see it on the front end. So we are going to add a data component which is known as a SQL data source. Now this SQL data source connects to any SQL database and gets the data and sets it to this grid view. So we don't have to perform the ADO.NET coding and the connected and disconnected architecture. This SQL data source will do it for us, and then this data source can be set to this grid view. So it is not a visible component. You cannot see the user interface. It is a backend component only, which will just handle the data. So in the source, what I'm going to do, above this grid view, in this row, you can drag and drop it anywhere. I'm just going to drag and drop it over here. Now if I go to the UI, you can see this SQL data source is added over here. Just click on this and go to configure data source. Now if you're doing it for the first time, if you click on this, you should not see any connection string. So that's why I'm going to show how to do it. I have already added one, and that's why it was there in the web.config. But let's click on new connection. Here's where you add the server name. If I click on this, you can see it's showing please wait while we retrieve the list of servers, and it is basically gonna get the server name that we have, which is unique to my system, which is desktop-cp tfru. Like if I just go ahead and click on connect object explorer, this is the server name that it should fetch. And if it doesn't fetch, you can see it is not fetching. Just go ahead and copy this, paste it over here itself, and when you paste it, you can see this field got enabled, which is saying select or enter a database name. Now whatever database name we have in our databases, that is what is shown up over here. If I click on this, you can see these are the different databases: eLibrary DB, Online Management DB. These are all the databases that I have over here. You can see, let me just cancel it. eLibrary DB, I have Online Management DB. Then we have some system databases also, master, model, MSDB, which we don't play around with. But that is what is shown over here. We need to select RDB, that is eLibrary DB. Click on OK, or if you want, you can just click on test connection, and you can see test connection successful. If this is the pop-up that you're getting, you're good to go. Click OK, click OK. That connection string will be created for you. Hit next. Now this connection string will get a name of eLibrary DB connection string. It should get something like this without the 2 if you're doing it for the first time. As I mentioned, I had already added one, so that's why I'm getting this 2. Click next, and now you have to select which table you want to access in that database. We've already selected the database. Now we have to select which table we want to manipulate, and the table that we want to manipulate is author master table. Okay, and we want to fire a select star from query. We want all the columns, that's why select star from. You can test this connection, click next and click on test query, and there you go. Now you're getting the value from the database. This is live real time from the database, and click finish. Once you click finish, the data source 1 component is completely configured. Now we have to set this grid view with this data source. So click on this grid view. In the properties, in the data source ID of the data property for this grid view, just select SQL data source 1. And now you can see we have author ID and author name. Now if I save this, if I refresh our page, there you go, you can see on the right hand side we have our grid view showing the values successfully. Let's add an entry of Joseph Murphy. I'm not sure if it will show us without actually binding the database. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's click on add, author added successfully. And yeah, it is not being shown over here in real time. That is because we have to add one line of code, which is basically coming to the coding part. So whenever you add new author or update new author or delete new author, what you have to do is in the add query, in the successful addition of author, you have to add one more line of code, which is gridview1.databind. So what this does is it will again connect with the data source. The data source will again connect with the database and get the new fresh data. So when you add a new author, one row will be increased in the table, right? So that table has to be refreshed. And this gridview1.databind does exactly that. It binds back to the data source component connects with the database and gets the data. So you can see minimum line of code, but the data source is being refreshed. Similarly, we'll do the same for update author. We'll do the same for delete author. And what we'll do is on the load event of this page also we'll call it once, gridview1.databind. So every time the data source is refreshed, the grid view is also refreshed and the data is bind between them. Refreshing the page. Now I think we should get it. Yeah, there you go, you can see. Let's add one more entry or one more author, A003. Let's name it Napoleon Hill. If I click on add, author added successfully, and there you go, in the grid view also I'm getting those particular data. If I just add this A003 and let's update it to only Napoleon, click on update. So the updated value is also shown in the grid view because we did the data bind. Similarly, let's actually delete this. If I click on delete, author deleted, and yeah, he's gone. Okay, so pretty much most of the part is done, but one very crucial part or very important aspect of this grid view is left is, if you've seen the demo website, in that demo website our grid view was search enabled and we had added the properties from Datatables. Now if you remember, Datatables is an external jQuery library which makes our grid view, which makes tables very powerful by adding some basic search functionality and a lot more actually, but we are more interested in the search functionality. So if you come to the project and if you watch the previous video tutorials, especially the first few, in fact the one where we actually added all the different resources, the CSS files of all the external libraries, remember we created this Datatables folder. Inside that we added a CSS file and we also added a jQuery file for this Datatables. Now if you don't know what Datatables is, just watch that video, or I'll drop some link in the video description to give you a refresh of what exactly is Datatables jQuery plugin. But we have to enable this into our grid view. So to do that, one thing that we've done already is, if you come to the site masters page, in the master page, in the heading, you can see we've added the CSS for Bootstrap, the CSS for Datatables, the CSS for Font Awesome library for those icons. Similarly, this is our custom CSS file. So this is for the CSS thing. But over here for the jQuery, we've added the actual jQuery file. We've added the Bootstrap popper.js. We've added the Bootstrap jQuery file. And over here at the bottom, this is basically the Datatables.js file. If you don't have this, probably I had missed it out. Just add it. The way you add it is just hit enter. Go to the Datatables folder, just drag and drop it over here, and you can see the script tag is automatically generated so that you don't make any typing mistakes, because the name you can see is very lengthy. So just click it and drag and drop it anywhere and it will be added. So this is something that we've already done. We've included all the external libraries into our master page, which means it is available throughout the project. But now we have to enable it. We have to make our grid view search enabled and add that functionality to it. So for that we need to fire a jQuery function, which is an inbuilt function which is called the .datatables function. So going to that actual Datatables page, so this is their official website. So the way you make a simple table or a grid view, a search enabled one, you have to use this small line of jQuery code. Now if you don't know jQuery syntax, don't worry, I'll explain to you. If you want to get more details, I have a JavaScript tutorial course separately on Telesco Learnings, you can check that. But I'll explain to you what this is. Coming to our code, we have to go to the author management page on the front end side. Go to the source. On the top you can see, remember we have two content tags. So the first content tag is for the head. So whatever you place inside this will go in the head of the master page, and that's what we want. So here I'm gonna paste a piece of code which is a script. So let me just show it to you. Okay, so this is the script tag inside which we have custom JavaScript function. And what is this function? So this is the $selector which basically selects the document. So this is how the jQuery syntax goes. And we are saying when the document is ready, so we are saying $select the entire document .ready function. So the ready function is when your entire website is loaded. This ready function is called. So when we want to do something, we want the entire website to be ready, right? So in a very simple sense that I'm trying to explain. Inside that we are creating a function which is a custom function. So it doesn't have a name. You can see there is no name to this function because we are calling it inside itself. So whenever the document is ready, we want this function to be called. This is the function prototype, and then curly braces is where the body starts. So this is the start of the function and this is the end. So you can see we have a function inside a function, kind of like an inception scenario, but the syntax is a little tricky, I understand. Anyways, the inner function is what we are saying is, we are saying $select a class or select those components which have a class of .table. So if you scroll down to the grid view, this is our grid view, right? You can see ASP grid view. You can see I have given it a class of table, and that is what is exactly being selected over here. So any component with this .table class is going to be selected. We have only one such component, which is the grid view itself. We are prepending th head. So if you scroll to the page, this is the heading, right? Or this is the heading of this entire grid view. So we are selecting that and we are appending this head to that, and that is because by default if you create this data table, it will not work. You have to add this line of code, and we are appending it to that we select, that is this table. So whenever first thing that we are selecting is the table, we are prepending a heading to the first row. So this is the first row, right? Technically this is the first row of this grid view. So we are making it a heading row and not the data row by this code. Okay, by finding the first tr, that is table row, and ultimately we are calling data table function. So this data table function exactly is like this. So we could have used this also, but as I mentioned in ASP, we don't get the th header by default in the grid view. That's why we have to append that header. Otherwise, if I just hit enter over here, even this code could have worked. I just need to provide the table over here. Let's comment this out. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna save this, refresh our website, and you can see it is still not working. And that's because this first row is also considered as a data row. So that's why we need to first make it a heading. So I'm gonna comment this out. I'm gonna uncomment this. So first selecting the table, that is the grid view, then prepending the very first row and making it a heading row, and then calling data tables function is what we have to do. Let's save this, and now if I refresh, so now there you go, you can see the UI has changed. We are getting show 10 entries, we are getting the search functionality, we are getting the pagination. If I click on next, we will get the next. After adding 10 entries, we can go to the next page. So this user interface is added just by this one single line of code. And when we call this data tables function, it is an inbuilt function which actually accesses the jQuery for this datatables.min.js. Inside that we have this function, and all the user interface, all the CSS is now added. Now if I just search over here, let's type in Joseph. If I type in JO, you can see I'm getting only one entry. If I hit backspace, I'm getting the second entry. If I want to search Dale, DA, we getting Dale. Let's say I want to say Carnegie. If I say immediately I'm getting only that entry which has C in it. So it is a proper random pattern matching, and this feature is very helpful to find a particular author which exists in the table or not. So now you can see we are pretty much completely developed the entire author details or author management page. Let's add one more author, A0003 Napoleon Hill. Click add. That's added, and now we have it in the new list. Now if I type in Hill HI, I'm getting this entry. Let's say I want to update A003 and I just want to name it Tanmay. Click update. That should be updated over here. Now if I search for Tanmay, I'm getting only one entry. And this is actually happening at the front end. Okay, so this filtering is happening on the front end because it is jQuery, which is working on the front end data. This is not actually filtering on the backend database. So that's where your website becomes very fast. And there are many other customizations that you can add. You can go through their entire documentation. You can go to their examples, some references, some more extensions, some advanced tables, how to do different types of pagination, and you can theme them and do a lot of things. But we are only going to use this basic one because that's what we actually need over here. We don't need to perform a lot of things. I just wanted to show how you can add an external third-party library to make your Gridview more powerful, and I hope you have understood how. Let's delete this third entry, A003. Click delete, author deleted, and we have only 2 entries left. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the author details. Similar to this, we have the publisher details. Let me just log in again. Going to the publisher management, the same thing applies. I've already done the entire coding for publisher details and publisher list. Now one last thing that was left is the go button, and what should happen on the go button is whatever ID you enter over here, that corresponding author name should come over here, which is a basic select query, right? So let's quickly do that. Going to the author management, saving this, go to the design, double click on go button. Over here we simply need to fire a select query. So let's come down to the check if author exists code. Let's copy this, create a new custom function again. Let's name it void get author by ID. Paste this code over here and erase out the return clause. We don't want to return anything. We want to get the author by ID, and we are going to fire select star from author master table where author ID is text box 1. So this query is also correct. We are getting the data and we are filling it in the data table. And here, if the data table.rows.count is greater than 1, we are simply going to say textbox2.text equals to dt.rows of 0, that is the first row, and the second column, that is 1, because rows and columns start from 0 and 0, dot toString. So we are just setting the text box 2 with the name of the author, and in the else part we can show a message saying invalid author ID. Okay, if you don't get any data, this select query didn't work, we are getting invalid author ID. Just call this get author by ID over here in the go button click. That's it. Let's save, let's refresh. Let's put A001. Click go, and there you go. You can see I'm getting Joseph Murphy. Now if I want to update it, I can do it directly from over here. Click update. I've added extra Y's. Okay, so the go button is now functional. Similar to author details and author list, I've already done everything for the publisher management code. The only thing that you have to change over here is the table names. Everything else is gonna be the same. So just quickly going through the code, I'll just show it to you because maybe you'll get confused. Now of course I'm gonna be sharing all this code with you on our official website, so you can completely refer that. If you're doing it for the first time, I would highly suggest that you type the code. But coming to the author publisher management, everything is pretty much the same over here. We've added that SQL data source, we've added the grid view. If you go to the source, we've initialized the script tag and the data tables function we've called over here. If you go to the add, we call the check publisher exist instead of check author exist, but the code is exactly the same. These are the user defined functions like get publisher by ID. So just like what we did with get author by ID, this is get publisher by ID, but the code is exactly the same, with the only difference being the select query. Here we are targeting the publisher master table and not the author master table. Okay, So I'm assuming you guys can create this entire page just like what we did in the author details or author management page. And yeah, that's it for this video, guys. I know this was a little lengthy, but we had to do 3 different add, update, delete queries, and we also had to style and make the grid view a very dynamic and highly functional grid view with the search functionality. So that's it for this video, guys. If you like this video, if you've made it so far, please give this video a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments how this video was. Do share it with your friends. You can use this insert, update, delete query in different projects in many other topics also. The logic is gonna be the same. And thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Peace.